Today I'm breaking down every major type of rice, what the research actually says about each one, and the simple tricks that can cut how much your blood sugar spikes after eating rice, sometimes by up to 35%. And before we jump in, if you want my complete 7-day meal plan with recipes, grocery lists, and a full guide to help you reverse type 2 diabetes naturally, then comment the word guide below and we'll send it to you for free. All right, let's get into it. First, let's talk about why rice spikes blood sugar. Rice is mostly starch, and starch breaks down into glucose pretty fast in your body. The speed at which that happens is measured by something called the glycemic index, or GI for short. The higher the GI, the faster blood sugar goes up. For people with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, those big, fast spikes are exactly what we're trying to avoid, because over time, they wear out your insulin response and make blood sugar harder to manage. But here's the thing, not all rice behaves the same way in your body. And honestly, the research on this is way more interesting than people think. So a lot of people assume Jasmine rice is a safe, light option. It looks delicate, it smells amazing, and it feels like it couldn't possibly be that bad. But Jasmine rice has one of the highest glycemic indexes of any rice, sitting somewhere between 68 and 80, depending on how it's cooked. So that puts it at the very bottom of this list, even below regular white rice. And the reason is the type of starch it contains. So Jasmine rice is very high in a starch called amylopectin, which breaks down almost immediately during digestion and floods your bloodstream with glucose fast. So if you have type 2 diabetes and Jasmine rice is your go-to, this is one of the most impactful swaps you can make. So let's start with white rice, the kind most people grew up eating. White rice has had its bran and germ removed, which strips out the fiber and nutrients that slow digestion down. What you're left with is pretty much pure starch that hits your bloodstream fast. Studies consistently show that regular white rice is linked to higher post-meal blood sugar and a greater long-term risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So yes, if you're eating big bowls of white rice every day and your blood sugar is out of control, this is a big piece of the puzzle. But swapping it isn't always as simple as just eat brown rice. And here's why. So brown rice keeps the bran and germ intact, so it does have more fiber and nutrients. And yes, population studies show that people who eat more brown rice have a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to people who eat white rice. But when researchers actually looked at what happens when people with type 2 diabetes switch from white to brown rice in clinical trials, the results were a little underwhelming. A meta-analysis that looked at multiple randomized controlled trials found no significant improvement in A1C or fasting blood sugar from brown rice alone. They did see some modest weight loss and improvements in HDL, your good cholesterol, which matters. But if you're eating brown rice thinking it's going to dramatically move your blood sugar numbers, you might be disappointed. The good news, there are better options. Okay, next up is wild rice, the one most people have never tried. Here's something a lot of people don't know. Wild rice is actually not a rice at all. It's a semi-aquatic grass seed that actually grew wild in North America, but it behaves significantly better than most conventional rice types for blood sugar. Wild rice has notably more fiber and protein than both white and brown rice and a lower glycemic index. That fiber and protein combination slows digestion down and softens the blood sugar response after eating. It sits comfortably above standard brown rice in terms of blood sugar impact, and it's a genuinely solid option for people with type 2 diabetes, especially when mixed into dishes, grain bowls, or served alongside vegetables and lean protein. It has a slightly nutty, chewy texture and a rich, earthy flavor. Some people love it, and some people it takes a little bit of time to get used to. But from a blood sugar standpoint, it definitely earns a spot near the top of the list. Next up is parboiled rice, the underrated rice. And this is the one that most people sleep on. So parboiled rice goes through a steam pressure process before milling, which pushes some of the nutrients from the bran into the grain. And more importantly, it changes the starch structure in a way that makes it digest more slowly. In a study with people with type 2 diabetes, parboiled rice reduced the blood sugar spike by about 35% compared to brown rice and white rice. 35%, that is not a small number. And a 2025 pilot study confirmed a similar trend. Parboiled rice led to better post-meal glucose and insulin responses compared to regular white rice. If you can find parboiled rice at your grocery store, and you usually can, this is a seriously underrated upgrade that most people with diabetes don't even know about. Okay, so next on the list, the research-backed gold standard for blood sugar is something called high-resistant starch rice, or low GI rice varieties. These are specifically developed rice types with higher amounts of a type of starch that your small intestine literally cannot digest. So it passes through without spiking blood sugar. And some of it actually feeds your gut bacteria, which is a huge bonus. In a randomized controlled trial over 3 months in people with type 2 diabetes, eating this high resistance starch rice not only lowered post-meal blood sugar, but also reduced A1C. That's your 3-month blood sugar average. And it reduced fasting blood sugar. Another review found that high amylose rice, which is another way of saying rice with more resistant starch, consistently produced lower post-meal glucose spikes across all the studies. But the catch is these varieties aren't always easy to find in regular supermarkets yet, but they are becoming more available online and in specialty stores. Some examples that I've come across are Cahokia rice and Parish rice. Okay, moving on to germinated brown rice, one more worth knowing. So germinated brown rice, also called sprouted brown rice, is brown rice that's been soaked and allowed to start sprouting before it's processed. That germination process increases nutrients that changes the starch in a way that's easier on blood sugar. In a 12-week randomized controlled trial in people with type 2 diabetes, germinated brown rice lowered fasting blood glucose and improved gut hormones involved in blood sugar regulation. You can usually find this in health food stores or online. It has a slightly nuttier flavor and a chewier texture than regular white rice. Okay, quick recap before we move on. So ranked from worst to best for blood sugar, Jasmine rice at the very bottom, then conventional white rice, then standard brown rice, then wild rice, then germinated brown rice, then parboiled rice, and at the top, high resistant starch rice. But here's where it gets really practical, because even if you're eating the best rice in the world, how much you eat and how you prepare it matters just as much. Real quick before I go on, comment guide below if you want my full 7-day meal plan for managing blood sugar. It includes exactly what to pair with rice and how to build your meals so blood sugar stays stable. Okay, so even low GI rice will spike your blood sugar if you eat 3 cups of it. Portion size directly affects how much glucose enters your blood. A reasonable serving for most people with type 2 diabetes is around 1/3 to 1/2 cup of cooked rice. That's about the size of your cupped palm. Pairing that portion with lean protein, healthy fats, and non-starchy vegetables slows everything down significantly. Think of it like a traffic jam. The protein and fat slow the movement of glucose into your bloodstream, so instead of a flood, you get a steady stream. And here are some simple tricks to lower the GI of any rice. These are a game changer, and the research backs them up. First, cook it, then cool it. When you cook rice and let it cool in the fridge for at least a few hours, some of that starch converts into resistant starch. That means your body absorbs it more slowly and it spikes blood sugar less. And yes, you can reheat it and the resistant starch mostly stays intact. So meal prepping rice is actually better for your blood sugar than eating it fresh. Second, add beans or lentils to your rice. Beans are high in fiber and protein, and mixing them into rice literally slows down how fast the rice is digested. Studies show that adding legumes to a rice-based meal lowers the overall glycemic response of the whole dish. Classic combinations like rice and beans aren't just delicious, they're genuinely smart for blood sugar. Third, eat rice later in your meal. Start with your salad or vegetables first, then protein, then rice last. Research shows that eating carbohydrates at the end of a meal instead of at the beginning results in significantly lower post-meal glucose spikes. The vegetables and the lean protein you already ate slow down the absorption of rice before it even hits your gut. Fourth, avoid puffed rice, rice cakes, or risotto-style preparations. Processing rice into puffed or refined forms dramatically increases its GI, sometimes making it worse than plain white rice. Here's the bottom line. You don't have to swear off rice forever, but the type you choose, how much you eat, and how you prepare it all add up to a real difference in your blood sugar numbers. Ditch the Jasmine rice, move away from white rice, try parboiled as your easiest immediate swap, explore more wild rice, germinated brown rice, or high resistance starch varieties when you can. Keep portions to about half a cup of cooked rice. Cool your rice before eating it when possible, and pair it with lean protein, beans, vegetables, and eat it last in your meal, not first. These aren't huge lifestyle overhauls, they're small practical shifts that your blood sugar will actually notice. If you want my full 7-day meal plan, including recipes and grocery lists, and a complete guide to reverse type 2 diabetes naturally, comment guide below and we'll get it to you for free. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so.